Good afternoon and welcome to our Primetime Alive program, Listen to Your Gut, Part 2. I'm Wendy D'Amato and I'm filling in for Vicki Newell today. I'm the volunteer coordinator here at Mary Greeley and I work very closely with Vicki. So we do wear masks when we're not able to maintain a 6-foot physical distance. And right now, since we're in a very large auditorium, and there's only 2 of us here, we're going to not have our masks on so you can understand us a little bit better. So we're going to show you the slide that shows how to submit a question. All right. There we go. All right, so you'll see up on the top of your screen, there's a little red arrow, and if you click on that arrow, you'll see the box where you can type in your question and then send it in. So you can do that anytime during the program, and then at the end, when our speaker has a time for questions, you can submit them then as well. So our presenter today is Lynn Mays. Lynn is a registered dietitian, certified diabetes care, and education specialist. She received her BS degree from Iowa State University in dietetics, food, and nutrition. And she also received a master's of public health degree from the University of Minnesota. Lynn has worked as a dietitian since graduation from Iowa State. She's worked here in Iowa as well as North Dakota and Minnesota. Please welcome Lynn Mays.
Hi, everybody. I always think when I do this, I've only done this a couple of times, that I should have cardboard cutouts of people out there so that I can see somebody out in the audience. Because it's if you've been in Bessie Meyer's, which I'm sure all of you have, it's a very strange experience to be looking out and only see one person and then knowing that Tim is up in the booth for us. So anyway, I'm happy to be here today, really getting to the guts of the matter with our little talk about gut health. So some of the slides you'll see are the same as the last time, because I threw some in thinking that we needed a little review, or if we had some people who didn't participate last time, that they might need to get updated on everything. But we're going to take things just a little bit further this time. So hopefully you enjoy it. And Tim's doing something with my slides right now, so that's why I paused a little bit. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so our objectives today, we are going to review gut health and its importance, understand the definitions of prebiotic, probiotic, and symbiotics, discuss food sources of prebiotics, probiotics, fermented foods, and symbiotics. And that symbiotics is not, it's not misspelled. That's how that word is spelled. So it's not sim with an M, it's sin with an N. Learn about the link between short-chain fatty acids, that's what SCFA is, and gut health. We'll do some practical advice. I even have some little props here today that we'll try to zoom in on and show you a few things, and how to apply this knowledge to your everyday life, and what to get at the grocery store. So let's go ahead and get started. So this one is kind of a repeat. This is, again, our gut and its lovely microbiome. So when we're talking about the gut, we are talking about our GI system. So gut health is talking about those trillions of bacteria that are in our gut, trillions of bacteria and other things. It could be yeasts or protozoa, things like that too. And gut health sometimes, or the gut itself is sometimes considered the forgotten organ, because it almost acts like another organ, kind of like our skin is an organ and our liver and our stomach. The gut actually is too. So sometimes it's forgotten. Okay, here are our definitions. So these are the very specific definitions that are written out. So I'm actually going to read them and then we'll add in some extra things. So microbiome is the collective genomes of the microbes. And the microbes are bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and viruses that live inside and on the body. So think about that. We all have these things that are living not just inside, but also on the exterior, on our skin and stuff of the body as well. Microbiota So the biome is the genomes. The microbiota is actually the specific microorganisms. Sometimes those two words are used interchangeably. And so when we're talking about gut health, usually we're talking about the microbiome or microbiota. And again, sometimes quite often they're just used interchangeably in these discussions. Probiotic, this is the official definition of probiotic, is live microorganisms that when administered in adequate amounts confer a health benefit on the host, all right? So the probiotic is, again, the microorganism, and then we are the host, okay? This is research-based, so it has to have research behind it in order for them to use probiotic as a term on the food labels. I guess I need to look at the camera because the camera's right there. I'm looking out in the audience. Okay, prebiotic, again, this is the official definition of prebiotic, a substrate that is selectively utilized by the host microorganism conferring a health benefit. So this one is basically food for the probiotic, and we'll go into each of these in more detail. I just wanted to get these very specific definitions, the technical definitions out there for you so you could see them. Synbiotic is a combination of prebiotic and probiotic. And then, of course, we have antibiotics, and those are substances that inhibit the growth or destroy microorganisms. And we're familiar with those. Antibiotics are important. We need those, obviously, sometimes when we get sick. But sometimes they can destroy the microbiota that are living in and on us that are essential. All right, so where are all of these bacteria, protozoa, where are all of those things, all of those microorganisms? So you can see here that we've got 10 to the 14th microorganisms on this slide and more than 500 different species, okay? So you can kind of see where they're all landing here just based on, I'll use my mouse. Okay, so you can see up here that up in the stomach and the duodenum and the rest of the small intestine, I just floated it away again, we have a smaller amount of those microorganisms. But then when we go down to the colon, you can see tons of different ones. So we can see right here, look at all of the different types. And this isn't even all of them. This is just kind of a little snapshot. So a simplified version of where everything is at. So you can see most of those, when we're talking about this, are going to be actually in the colon. So that's why a lot of this discussion is about when we talk about gut health, a lot of it is located here in the colon. And you can even see it here when we're looking at the numbers, about how the numbers, so there are so many more in the colon than there are in the rest of the GI system, okay? All right, so we know that we have lots of different ones and large number of them, right? So here, both quantity and diversity are important. So it's important to have both that large quantity that we're looking at and also the diversity. When we don't have enough variety or don't have enough of them, it can cause some problems. So increased allergies and asthma, blood sugar issues and insulin resistance, obesity, issues with lipid levels, inflammation, all of those things are linked with gut health. And this is a repeat slide from last time. So I do go into some of this a little bit further later on too. Okay. Now, what does our gut and microbiome or microbiota do for us? If you remember last time, we talked a little bit about some of this stuff, and we'll go into it again in more detail. It helps us to digest and absorb food, produces certain nutrients like vitamin K and B vitamins, determine how many calories we extract from food, maintain our gut lining. It influences our nutrient absorption. It helps with the immune system. Actually, they think 70% of our immune system is in the gut. And it also helps with the inflammatory response. They used to think for a long time that our gut bacteria really just benefited from us. So we feed our gut microbiota. So it's not just the bacteria, but all of the other organisms that are there. We feed those organisms every time we eat, right? And so it was thought for a long time that they really just benefited from it. But we've discovered, obviously, you can see from this slide, that we also benefit. So this is a mutually beneficial relationship that we have between us and our gut microbiota. So what affects our gut health? This is kind of a fun way to look at it on this slide. So we're going to start down here with stress, actually. Okay, and I'm going to work my way around. So stress does have an impact. A moderate amount of stress a lot of times has a positive impact. A moderate amount like of exercise and that type of thing can have a positive impact. But too much of either stress or endurance activities, sometimes even will do this, will have a negative impact for a short period of time. Luckily, the turnaround for our gut health is pretty quick, so we can turn it around, decrease that stress, and improve our gut health again. Both the birthing process, going back, we can't change how this happened now, right, in our lives, but if we go back, way back to the beginning of your life, the birthing process and infant feeding methods affect your gut health and affect your microbiome. Now, that changes pretty quickly in the first 3 years. So the first 3 years, we have a lot of change in how our gut microbiome is affected, our gut microbiota and those organisms that we have, and even the organisms on our skin. And they do change as we go through our life cycles. So they might change a little bit. And there is a pretty big change from different geographic regions. And that really kind of makes sense because if you think about the foods that are eaten in different places, the different types of soils, the different activities that people are involved in, and something else to remember there is that a lot of times when we think about Western society, there have been some studies that have actually shown that Western society does have, because of having higher fat, higher protein diets, we tend to have maybe a little different gut bacteria gut microorganisms that might not be quite as healthy as what some other cultures might have. So, thus looking at the way some other people eat and being more plant-based. Then, of course, we've got pharmaceuticals. And under pharmaceuticals, we would be looking at the antibiotics that we talked about, right? Because we know that they can kill bacteria. That's their job. We want them to kill those bad bacteria that are making us sick. And so they're very important, but they can also kill off some of the good bacteria. So that's something that, maybe sometimes when you've been into the doctor and they've had you go on antibiotics, they've maybe talked to you about using a probiotic. I know I've been told that before when I have been put on an antibiotic that I should look at doing a probiotic. So have a good conversation with your doctor about that if you are concerned, because obviously if you're killing off some of your good, healthy microorganisms in your body, along with the bad ones, that creates a whole different problem. And then the last one on this slide is diet. And that's probably the one that affects our gut microbiota the most, okay? So that's what a big share of this, that's what pretty much the rest of this talk is going to talk about, is your diet and what you can do to help have a healthy gut. Okay, so you are what you eat. Again, this is kind of a repeat from last time. Every time you eat, you have a chance to make a change to your microbiome. You can help both the diversity and the quantity. So by making choices, and I talked a little bit about this with the different regions, so by choosing more fruits and vegetables and more plant-based, you can feed those healthy microbiomes versus some of the higher fat, high protein things that maybe don't feed those quite as well and maybe feed some of the things that are not quite as healthy for us. All right. Next one, diet and gut health. So like I said earlier, diet is the number one factor affecting gut health. So on the positive side, a plant-based diet is a real positive thing to help with producing those, increasing that diversity, and both the quantity and the diversity. And then we have fiber, and then polyphenols. So, well, I'll talk a little bit about all of this stuff in a little bit, but polyphenols is another one. Those are those phytochemicals that are in a lot of our fruits and vegetables. A more varied diet, the more varied the diet, the more diverse the microbiota. And then again, like I said, it varies by country and region, et cetera. So negative impacts would be protein and fat. And I mentioned this last time too, that sometimes the high protein, high fat foods, there are some of those microorganisms that do work with the protein and fat, but sometimes they don't have quite the positive health benefits that the plant-based foods do. So a real high fat, high protein diet sometimes has a negative impact on our gut health. Alcohol and sugar substitutes also can have a negative impact. The specific sugar substitutes that we're talking about, the only ones that I really found research on were sucralose, which is Splenda, saccharin, and stevia. Those were the only ones that I saw that they had negative research that showed negative effects on your gut health. And again, a lot of these studies are pretty small, and it's still a growing area. So, sometimes we have to keep looking at these things and seeing if there are any changes. And again, a country and region. So if we have a country or region that eats a lot of those foods that have a negative impact on our gut health, that might affect us negatively, just like it could affect us positively. All right, colorful plant foods. So a lot of plant foods are really important for our gut health. And the biggest reason for that is that our plant foods typically are going to have those carbohydrates that are broken down. So plants contain compounds called phytochemicals, such as the polyphenols. So polyphenols are actually a diverse class of plant secondary metabolites and they're often associated with the color and the taste of the foods that we eat. So those bright reds and oranges and blues and yellows and all of those different colors a lot of times come from the different polyphenols that are in there. But those are also the ones that have been studied to help with the prevention of chronic disease as well. So they help with that, but they're also beneficial for our gut health because they can help to modulate the gut microbiota towards a more healthy profile. And then our plants also contain fibers, starch, and prebiotics that help the good bacteria and promote the diversity and abundance we desire. And it helps support the digestive system and decrease harmful inflammation. Some of those get to be tongue twisters. So, all right. I have notes on my notes over here, so I have to keep myself caught up. Okay, so plant fibers and gut health. This is really a big part of gut health. So first of all, plants contain those carbohydrates and fibers, all right? And carbohydrate, if you think about how carbohydrate works, when we eat, that's kind of our main source of fuel. But we also have fibers in there. So our carbohydrates are broken down and used for fuel. And the fibers are what we think of as the undigested portion of that. And so those kind of they can then pass through, and that's how they end up in the colon and helping to feed our gut microbiota. So when they pass through and go to the colon, they're fermented by these beneficial bacteria, certain bacteria, and then they produce beneficial metabolites, which would be byproducts. And one of those, which is they're really studying a lot now, are short chain fatty acids. And we'll talk a little bit about short chain fatty acids more, so I'll explain that a little bit more. Fibers vary in how they ferment. So we have soluble fiber and we have insoluble fiber. And the soluble fibers are more of the fermentable ones. And I'll give you a list of those in just a little bit. But those are the ones that are more fermentable. And those are the ones in our gut. And those are the ones as they go through the bacteria and microbiota, work with those and help to ferment those to have beneficial byproducts. And these soluble fibers are often what we term prebiotics. All right. So prebiotics are naturally occurring non-digestible food components that are linked to promoting the growth of helpful bacteria in your gut. That's the official definition, okay? We want to remember most prebiotics are fibers, but not all fibers are prebiotics. So you won't find it on a label. We might start to see it a little bit more put on labels because people are starting to learn a little bit more about it. But terms you can look for and words you can look for are these big words that I've got here: fructooligosaccharides, oligofructosaccharides, chicory fiber, inulin, and galacto-oligosaccharides. And so these are the ones that help to produce those short-chain fatty acids that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. And then we have our prebiotic foods. And so this is a list of prebiotic foods, of foods that have those fibers that we just talked about on the last page. We have bananas, beans and lentils, garlic, leeks, and onions. And I forgot to change how leeks was spelled on here, it looks like, because that's spelled incorrectly. It should be L-E-E-K-S. They aren't leaky onions, they are leeks. Okay. We have brown, red, and black rice. Other whole grains, asparagus, jicama. And so last time we talked a little bit about that. This is jicama right here, if you don't know what that is. And then resistant starch I added to that. Resistant starch are things like if you've ever bought parboiled rice, that would be a resistant starch because it's already cooked and then you reheat it. But you could do that yourself at home. So you cook and cool down the rice and then you reheat it. And you can also do that with rice, potatoes, other grains, and even with oats and overnight oats, if you've ever made those also are a resistant starch and would fall in that prebiotic foods. Okay, I lost my mouse again here, just a minute. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. So why do we need those short chain fatty acids? First of all, like I said, when we eat something, the carbohydrate is used as fuel, right? And then some of those other fibers, they're undigestible, so they get to the colon. And then those little microbiota that are in there, they work with the fiber and to help to ferment those, and then that produces short chain fatty acids. They can be produced with other things too, but it's usually fiber. So our short chain fatty acids have a lot of really good benefits. They're this byproduct of the fermentation process, but they have some great benefits for us. So their main purpose is as energy for colon cells, and they also help to boost the mucus layer in the gut. Sometimes they travel to other parts of the body, and they might benefit they might help with that anti-inflammatory response that we're talking about, the immune system, and also how energy is metabolized. So I have this specific definition here of what they do. Their main reason for existence is serving as an energy source for colon cells, but they also boost protective mucus layer, influence genes that control cell proliferation, okay? And they might help in gut motility. So this is where some of the benefits come in. So we want to see these short chain fatty acids being developed in our GI system. And actually sometimes for certain GI diseases like ulcerative colitis, short chain fatty acids are actually used as the treatment. So by trying to do these prebiotics and getting our body to do it ourselves, we're kind of helping to treat that and hopefully to prevent those types of things, or or prevent additional flare-ups from those. All right, now probiotics. Probiotics, if we remember that those are, the specific definition here was they are live microorganisms that when administered in adequate amounts confer a health benefit on the host, all right? So probiotics are some of those same microorganisms that are in our body, and so we're trying to supplement what's in there. We can't necessarily replace them, but we can kind of supplement. So we add them, we take them in as food. Sometimes people might take them as supplements. They're made up of good bacteria or yeast, and they help to fight off the bad bacteria and help to restore balance in your body. Okay, next we have food sources of probiotics. So we're seeing more and more of these. They do have to meet that definition of probiotics before they can actually have that put on the label. So a lot of these things are going to fit that because they are going to have some of those bacteria. So fermented vegetables like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled beets, carrots. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about fermented vegetables in a little bit specifically and the process of fermenting. Fermented fruits, chutneys, jams, green papaya, pickled jackfruit. And then we've got things like cultured yogurt, kefir, sour cream, buttermilk, so cultured dairy products. Kombucha is a fermented tea, and it's a cultured tea. Fermented condiments, homemade ketchup, relishes, salsas, and pickled ginger. You can also make kefir from water or coconut milk, homemade coconut milk or cashew milk yogurt. So again, yogurt or kefir made from things other than dairy products. Beet, I don't know how to pronounce this, but kvass. It is similar to a kombucha. So it is a fermented beet juice, basically. And then we have natto, which is a fermented soybeans. And then miso is a soup. And then we have tempeh. And I actually brought along, I'll show you that in just a little bit. We have tempeh and tamari sauce. So those are all some products, some probiotic food products that you can find in the grocery store. So they will meet those definitions, and they will have some of those bacteria and microorganisms that we are talking about here. All right. Probiotics and research-based health benefits. So these are the things that there is positive research outcomes reported on these when taking these probiotics for these different conditions. So gastrointestinal disorders, we have things like inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. So diarrhea, and that can be either antibiotic related or infectious or even traveler's diarrhea. So if you travel, if you can get some probiotics, that might help to decrease the chance of getting it. Non-gastrointestinal disorders. These aren't studied quite as much, but there is some positive research that reinforces it. A lot of the research is really pretty small studies, but it's showing a lot of positive response. So critical illness, surgery, dermatology, especially eczema, urology, in dentistry, for yeast infections, candidias, oncology, and obesity. There's actually quite a bit of research on obesity. But one thing we have to remember is that if you're looking for a probiotic to help with some of these conditions is talk to your provider first. And you do want to be strain specific. So it's very important to choose the right strain. And here is this slide, if you watched last time. So this is a little bit about probiotic supplements and just probiotics in general. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of positive research, but we still need more. If you're considering it, you need to take the right strain. So a Chihuahua and a St. Bernard are both dogs, but they're not mistaken for one another, right? So the St. Bernard may want to be a lap dog, but I don't know about you, but it's not going to be a lap dog for me. A Chihuahua can be a lap dog, right? So we want to be strain specific and pick the right strain for the right condition. So here's kind of an example for you. Choosing the right probiotic. So here we've got the GI issues. Remember I talked about those were one of the things that there's a lot of good research out about it. So this one, we've got irritable bowel and constipation. So we can see here, I'll see if I can get my mouse going. So here we've got, here is, I gotta make sure I do this right. So here is the genus, right here. Here is the species, and then we have the strain, and then there might be a little description of the strain. So again, down here we've got like this Lactobacillus acidophilus. That's in a lot of things. You see it a lot in yogurt, but they don't necessarily get the strain in there. So here's the strain. These are 2 yogurts that do actually have the strain listed. So again, we know that these specific strains that are back here on the back end of these, those are beneficial for helping with irritable bowel and constipation. So these are 2 examples of that. And I also brought along, Tim, can we see this? If I hold it up, can we see it?
The camera doesn't seem to be working right now.
Oh, the camera's not working. Sorry, people. I brought props, but we might not get to use them. Okay. All right. Okay. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what we mean by a specific strain. So again, I use this as an example because GI issues, are something that at home you might notice you have some of them, and you can sure go ahead and try some of these things. If you have some of those other chronic conditions and you're thinking you want to try a probiotic to see if that might help, I would talk to your doctor first and your provider. And then if they think it's a good idea, then look at more the specific strains that you need to have, because there are some things out there. So I gave this as an example because it's one that, if you've got those, it's not going to be harmful to go out and get it. And these strains are available in other things, and they might even be available in some supplements, but they are available in these 2 yogurts. So just telling you that that's strain specific. So, okay. And the Activia, to tell you where they can be found, the Activia yogurt you can find in most grocery stores, and they've even got some new probiotic shots that I found. They're called Probiotic Dailies. The Nancy's probiotic, they suggest the low fat because remember we're talking about the fat also being a negative thing. The only Nancy's I could find in town here was at Wheatsfield. They might have it other places. And again, if you check with other yogurt companies, you would probably have to write the company. A lot of them have the Lactobacillus acidophilus and this other one, Bifidobacterium infantis, but they don't necessarily say the strain. So if you write to the company, they might be able to tell you if that strain is in there or not, because a lot of yogurts do have those bacteria in there. There is also some debate about whether or not they need to be live, because some of them, there's some research out there that says that some of the bacteria can be dormant, and then when you consume it, it can kind of wake it up again. So there is a little bit of positive research on that too. So it may not be that they necessarily have to be live, even though that's the official definition. That's a little bit back and forth. So, all right. Okay. So next on the list, we've got the fermented foods. So fermented foods is a method of preserving that's been along for a long time. I said last time about how my dad had always had sauerkraut on hand. I, grew up in a German family. My dad had sauerkraut, and he told us to eat it because it was good for us. And we thought we just waved him off like, oh, Dad, you're just saying that, You know how dads say things, right? But come to find out, my dad was right? So, but fermentation is a process that's been around for thousands of years. They found way back thousands and thousands of years ago in China, they found evidence of fermented beverages, and they actually what I read was they think that sourdough maybe originated in Egypt because they left this dough sitting out and this sourdough sitting out and it rose. And so it made a bread. So, and then they realized that that bread was easier to digest. So imagine that. The word ferment actually comes from the Latin word fervor, which means, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. If anyone knows Latin, don't say anything because I don't know Latin, which means to boil. Okay, and that's a really appropriate description because if you've ever seen any of this stuff when it's fermenting, it does this bubbling. And I made some sourdough starter today and I brought that along, and that was one of my little that I wanted to share. Are we still not working, Tim? So I brought some sourdough starter along to show you guys the nice bubbly stuff. But if you look right here at this picture, that's kind of what my starter looks like. It's all bubbly. And so basically you just take flour and water and you get some starter from somebody. You can just do it on its own without that, and over time it will do it. And it just kind of grows. It's kind of this growing little body of stuff. And then you can make bread out of it. So it's kind of fun. And it's the same with other things as well. And with your fermented vegetables, so the result of this fermentation then, we end up with some of those same bacteria then. Those are kind of some of the byproducts. So these are some of our fermented foods. Okay, so we've got yogurt, kefir, buttermilk, fermented tea, which would be that kombucha that we talked about, tempeh. And I actually brought along a little brick of tempeh to show you what it looks like, but my camera's not working right now, so I can't show you that. Sorry. Here's the tempeh right there. It comes in a brick. My tempeh that I have today is a fermented soy product, but it also has brown rice in it. And then I'm going to show you some recipes of how you can use some of these things too in just a little bit. This is the kombucha down here, and here's sauerkraut. This is sourdough after it's been cooked up, and you can see all the little bubbles in there. That's kind of from the gases that are produced from that fermentation process, and that's the rising that occurs. Sauerkraut, kimchi, really you can do just about any vegetable. I don't know if you realize this, but our vegetables all have some bacteria actually on them, and we're looking at, when we look at these fermented vegetables and fruits, we want them that are fermented naturally with a brine. Usually it's with a salt brine, rather than using a chemical process like vinegar, because the natural way of doing it is going to give you, with the salt brine, is going to create those bacteria. So there are recipes of how you can do that. You have to make sure it's totally covered, and you make this salt brine, and then you let it sit and you just let it ferment for however long to give you the taste that you want. And then again, it gives you that bacteria, those bacteria that are beneficial for you. Okay, and then we have symbiotic. So it is not symbiotic, it is symbiotic, all right? A new word here today. Combination of probiotic and prebiotic. So it has to meet the criteria of both a probiotic and a prebiotic. The prebiotic selectively supports the growth of the probiotic component, all right? So examples of that would be kefir or yogurt with bananas. So those would be both. So if we think about that, remember we said the kefir and the yogurt are probiotics, right? We listed those as our probiotic foods. And then bananas have those prebiotic fibers, if we look back at that prebiotic fiber list. So we combine the two together and we've got a symbiotic food or a symbiotic meal. So another one would be kombucha with chia seeds. They actually bottle it this way. One of my colleagues loves it. But kombucha with chia seeds. So again, you've got the kombucha that has the probiotics in there, and then you've got the chia seeds that have those prebiotic fibers. Miso soup made with onions, leeks, and asparagus. Also, another one I put in there is the addition of inulin fiber to cultured yogurts. So that would be a combination. The inulin fiber would be So some of our, typically yogurt is not going to have fiber in it, but sometimes they put some of those things in there to add fiber, and then that would make it a symbiotic food. All right, so what should we eat? This picture kind of really says a lot. We really encourage a plant-based diet. That doesn't mean it has to have no meat. I know I said that, too much fat, too much protein can produce too much of the harmful microorganisms, which then might overpower our good microorganisms. But still, we can still have a moderate amount of meat. It's just maybe you don't want to do the keto diet or something like that. But if you're looking at different meal plans, Mediterranean diet might work well because that's really a plant-based diet. It adds in some fish and it emphasizes seeds and nuts and also healthy types of fat, so your monounsaturated fats. The DASH diet, which is one for heart health, but also emphasizes decreased sodium. The MIND diet is very similar to both the Mediterranean diet and in the DASH diet in that it promotes a plant-based diet with a small amount of proteins and meat, or a small amount of meats added to it, but it also promotes specific foods from each food group, like berries and things like that. So again, you'd be looking at those good prebiotic fibers. And of course, a vegetarian or vegan diet would be good choices as well if you're looking at specific diets that are out there. Those would be good ones that would kind of incorporate this whole philosophy of gut health. All right. Gut health superfoods. We had this list last time. So our gut health superfoods are here. We've got this in alphabetical order pretty much, all the way from almonds to turmeric. So turmeric is a spice, but it's a little root thing that you can grind up. So all of these things would either be probiotic, prebiotics, or polyphenols. So we can see that we've got some prebiotic fibers in here, right? Plus some things that are polyphenols, like the black currants, black and red rice, the berries, also things that are probiotics, like our kefir and our yogurt. So by including a variety of these different things and getting the 3 Ps of gut health, the probiotics, prebiotics, and polyphenols, that's going to give you a good start on having a healthy gut. All right. Meal planning, this one I used last time too. Add yogurt and kefir for breakfast and smoothies. Have those brightly colored vegetables and fruits and whole grains. Substitute black rice for white. Add tempeh to salads, curries, or stir fries. Use sauerkraut, kimchi, or whatever vegetable that you want to ferment. I mean, you can ferment your green beans if you want to, or your carrots, whatever you want to ferment, as long as it's fermented in that brine using the salt versus in the chemical version. Spice up your dishes with garlic, onions, leeks, and turmeric. Add nuts and legumes to salads and various dishes. And then use the sourdough from the starter that you couldn't see my starter, but you saw a picture with the starter, that bubbly, nice starter. And then this is just a sample menu if you wanted to think about what your day might look like if you were trying to be more gut healthy thinking, okay? So breakfast, overnight oats. And I actually have a recipe included on here for overnight oats. I was going to try and make some for show and tell here today, but since our camera doesn't work and I didn't have any of the old-fashioned rolled oats at home, I used them all up apparently. For lunch, tempeh tacos. Dinner, lentil stew with a mixed green salad. And for snack, have an apple. So if you think about that with the overnight oats, it's got oats and either milk, or you can use coconut milk or water, and then you put a little bit of yogurt or kefir in with it. So you've got the oats that are the prebiotic, and then you've got the probiotic along with it. So it's, again, another symbiotic thing. So we'll look at those with each of these recipes. So this is kind of a fun way to do this. So if we look at these overnight oats, again, we can see how this might be a symbiotic recipe, right? That new word that we have today. So we have our old-fashioned oats, and then we add our liquid. Usually it's a milk of choice, but you can use water. And then you add any of these other things. So if you would add Greek yogurt to that, or a little bit of kefir to that, and then add some chia seeds, you would see that you would have that symbiotic relationship because you've got that variety of different stuff. So basically, you just throw those things in a small little jar like this, leave it soak 8 hours or overnight. If you use milk, you'll probably want to put it in the refrigerator. If you use water, you can probably leave it out, but put it in the refrigerator and let it soak overnight. And that makes it a resistant starch in and of itself with that oatmeal and the overnight oats part of it. And remember, we talked about that being one of the prebiotic fibers, the resistant starch. And then you can add other things to it in the morning too if you wanted to. All right. So that's one that, again, has all of that stuff in it. So it would be a symbiotic food source for you. And Tempeh Tacos. This is a favorite at our house, actually. You take tempeh, and I get the plain kind. And then whatever you want for taco seasoning, if you make your own or if you want to use one that's pre-made, you can find low-sodium ones out there, however you want to do it. And then taco shells, whatever your choice is there. Lettuce or spinach or some kind of salad greens, tomatoes, cheese, other taco fillings. And this is where, again, you can make it more of a symbiotic relationship. So our tempeh here is that cultured food. Remember, that's our cultured soy. Okay, so that's the fermented food. That's what's fermented, and that's what's got those probiotics in there, those healthy microorganisms in there. So then if we add some of these other things, like down here, if we add guacamole, remember avocado was in that list of fibers and of good foods. Onions was in that list of prebiotic fibers. If you used like black beans or something like that and put that in there, again, that was in that list of prebiotic fibers. So again, mix that all together, and we've got kind of that symbiotic relationship where you've got the probiotics and the prebiotics together to help with that healthy, the gut health and the healthy microbiomes. Microbiota, interchangeable word, right? Okay. And then this one, a vegan lentil stew, and you could do a side salad with it. This lentil stew just in and of itself makes a really good symbiotic. Oops, I just pushed myself backwards. Let's go back again. The lentil stew itself is a good symbiotic food. So again, we've got the lentils in here that are going to be those prebiotic fibers, right? Along with some of our veggies that we've got in there. And then we've got Dijon mustard, soy sauce, broth. This doesn't have the probiotic in it. Sorry about that. I was thinking that I did have one there. So anyway, you have this, but then you could add like a kombucha or something to drink with it that would give you the probiotic. This gives you all those prebiotic fibers. Lots of good prebiotic fibers in here. But then if you add it with something else, you could have the probiotics with it. So you could do a little bit of, pickled vegetable, a little bit of fermented vegetables along with it, or maybe some kombucha or something to drink like that. So making it, again, a symbiotic thing, okay? And here is the whole thing on how to make it. This one's actually really good. I like it a lot. All right, so last of all, we have to have just a little pun because, we've got culture. Here we've got our cultured bacteria. And so your bacteria are very cultured when they're having this discussion. The one bacteria says to the other, I must say, I prefer Verde's Don Carlos to La Traviata. And the other one says, I concur, but what of Aida? So we've got very good cultured bacteria there. And hopefully, after doing this, you will have nicely cultured bacteria as well. Then I do have my resources here, and you should have a handout that Wendy sent out to you with some good information from there. And there is a website on there that you can go to and look some things up. If you do want information on making your own, doing your own sourdough bread, or if you want some information on fermenting vegetables with that salt brine, just let us know and I can send that, have Wendy send it out to you guys. So now I will take any questions that you guys might have. Okay, so I have a question here that says, if 70% of our immune system is in the gut, are you aware if there is any research underway to understand the effect of gut health on susceptibility to serious outcomes of COVID-19? I am not aware of any, but it does kind of, make sense to look through some of this. I think right now probably they're looking at so many other things with COVID-19 that maybe that's something that down the line they might want to look at. But, it's obviously not going to hurt anything to try and do some of these, incorporate some of these healthy foods and have consume the gut healthy diet, because that, again, is supposed to help your immune system. And then I have another one that says, which of the gut healthy foods are likely to cause a person to be gassy? Now, if you think about those fibers, right, those prebiotic fibers that we talked about, all of those prebiotic fibers that we list, if you just start out and eat a whole bunch of them at one time, probably can cause a lot of gas. So you want, because that's part of that fermentation process, it's the gases that are in there. So any of those can cause you to be gassy. So my advice is, if you're not used to eating a lot of fiber and you're not used to eating a lot of those foods, do it gradually and add those in gradually. And then that might help to not have quite so much gas. And then I have another question that says, are overnight oats better than making them in the morning? As far as for the resistant starch and that fact, yes. So a couple of things that will benefit from that, they do become kind of one of those prebiotic fibers that we talked about. And also, and this is part of them being that prebiotic fiber, with people who have diabetes, if they do their oats as an overnight oats, oatmeal, even though it's a really good fiber and a really good thing for people to eat, it does tend to cause people with diabetes to have a really big spike right after. Usually their blood sugar comes back down again, but it does usually jump up there. When people use it, make it as a resistant starch, so if you would make overnight oats or make them up the night before and then reheat them, that would kind of decrease the chances of that a little bit. Do we have any other questions? Only 3 questions today? Okay, somebody else, Betsy. Excellent, packed with information. I can't wait to try the new recipes. Good. I picked recipes that I like, all of them, so. So there you go. Anybody else have any questions? And like I said, why overnight? Yep. So it's just to make it that it doesn't have to be overnight. Somebody asked why to do it overnight. You don't have to do it overnight. They're just called overnight oats because then you can make them at night and then you get up in the morning and they're ready to go and you can reheat them or add more stuff to them or whatever. So that's the reason it's overnight. It's just the fact of just letting them soak and letting them you can do it during the day. So if you wanted to have, oatmeal for dinner, that would be fine. And then I have another one that says leftover oatmeal is good the next day then. Yep, leftover oatmeal is good the next day. But what adds the micro enhancer to it? I'm not sure if I understand that question. What do you think of, I'm not sure if I understand the micro enhancer question for the person who asked that one. What do you think about drinking fermented vinegar for health purposes? I haven't read anything about fermented vinegar for health purposes. Now, vinegar is used in a lot of recipes that have health benefits to it, but vinegar doesn't create the, when you use vinegar in making like your fermented foods, it doesn't get the benefits to it. But I don't think I've ever had fermented vinegar. I'll have to look that up. Oh, what adds the gut benefits to the overnight oats? Okay, thanks for the clarification on that. What adds the gut benefits to the overnight oats? I don't actually know that for sure, and I don't know if they totally know that for sure, but it's something about it. It becomes what they call a resistant starch. And how it was explained to me, was that as this starch expands, when it's heated up or when it's sat overnight, and then it contracts as it cools down, then it doesn't expand quite as much when you reheat it, was how it was explained to me, and then that makes it beneficial. I'm not sure how it works for making it more of a prebiotic fiber. I would have to look into that more. I know that they just list it as a prebiotic fiber that then, so the thing with the prebiotic fibers is that they are ones that are a soluble fiber, and they are then fermented in the colon. So they are not digested, they're fermented in the colon, and they work with the gut bacteria to then produce those short chain fatty acids. So that's kind of what those prebiotic fibers are. So I'm not sure what it is with the heating and reheating it that makes it more that way. I'll have to look and see, but I know it is just listed as one of those. Other than extra protein, are there other advantages to Greek over, I think this is regular yogurt, is that right? Can I see the rest of the question? Okay, yep, there we go. Other than extra protein, are there other advantages to Greek over regular yogurt? Not particularly, because like the yogurt shot that I brought along today, that was real liquid. So not really. The other yogurts, the non-Greek ones, are still going to have those probiotic fibers in them. So, and this one just has, this one's a probiotic daily, it's called. And I think it has extra probiotics added to it. So, Candida, somebody asked, what is Candidus? Candidus is yeast infections, actually. It's usually we're talking about the vaginal yeast infections, but it could also be thrush, which would be in the mouth, but it's the yeast, an overgrowth of that. Candidus is a yeast. And what happens with that is that kind of overtakes some of our good microorganisms, and then that's kind of what causes then the negative effects to us. So that yeast can overtake, and so we don't want it to overtake everything else. So by adding some of these probiotics and balance things out, then it should help to prevent that from happening. Any other questions that people have? So somebody asked, so is a vaginal yeast infection helped by these? Now, there are certain ones that can be beneficial for a vaginal yeast infection, but again, you want to get the strain specific. So you want to get information about which strain would be beneficial. Now, it's not going to be harmful to use some of these yogurts and stuff, but and she's saying these specific probiotics. I have a list of them, and I can't remember off the top of my head which ones for yeast infections are beneficial, but there are specific ones, and I can't think if any of them were in actually a food. It might have been Nancy's Greek yogurt might be, but I can't swear that it is. So, but there are specific probiotics that you would want to look at the specific strain. Nancy's Greek might be, but I would have to. Another one that might be is one called Yokult, Y-O-K-U-L-T, might be, but I can't say for sure. I'd have to look at my list that I have, and I don't have that right in front of me, so. Any other questions? All right. Well, that is it. Wendy's standing over here like she wants to say something to you guys. So I'm going to let Wendy take over. Good to talk to you guys again. You have a good day and have a happy holiday season, everyone.
Soup recipe in your handouts.
The soup recipe is not in the it should be in the handout that Wendy sent to you. You sent him the PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
She sent you my PowerPoint, so the soup recipe should be in there.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Lynn, for your time in preparing and presenting the program. A lot of good, interesting information. I was up there taking notes myself. So I would like to remind everyone of our next Primetime Alive program. And next week, it's going to be our first ever virtual Primetime Alive holiday event. Vicki and I are sad that we're not going to be able to do this in person this year, but we do have a fun option for all of you. So next Wednesday, December 9th at 2 p.m., join your Primetime Alive friends virtually to kick off the holiday season. You can don your favorite holiday sweater or lounging clothes. This year, it doesn't matter because you can join us from the comfort of your home. This year's program will include a welcome information from Vicki Newell, some remarks by Brian Dieter, the president and CEO of Mayor Greeley, and then a speaker, and her topic is Don't Keep Your Elf on the Shelf This Holiday Season. But Vicki promises some fun for this program, so we hope as many of you that can tune in. You were able to register for that program with the email that we sent out with both of these, but if you need more information about that, please respond to my email that I sent out today, and I'd be happy to get that sign-up information out to you. So thanks for joining us today. If you're unable to join us next week, we wish you all a wonderful holiday and a safe and healthy Happy New Year. Thank you.